Good afternoon and good morning to everyone. I want to make sure you can hear. This is Sam McClellan, and looks like everybody knows the drill here now. We've got quite a few people joining in, and we'd love for you to fill out your name, title, and organization. Give us your email so we can keep in touch with you for polls and follow-ups. See, most of you are doing that. We won't spam you, promise. Even though I'm a marketer, I won't spam you. So for those who aren't familiar, I am Sam McClellan. I work with Lauren on the safehighways.org program, and obviously my full-time job is Vice President of Sponsorship with Travelers Marketing. As I mentioned, make sure you fill out your name in that box right below my photo. And thank you for taking your time today. I know you all have busy and very important jobs. We hope to help with that, and we hope it's a good investment of your time. We've worked hard to put together what I think is going to be a great session on training. We work, when I say we, it's our steering committee members. Todd Leiss from the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission will be one of our presenters today. We've given Jason Josie, who's with us, a little bit of a breather today. And we've asked John McClellan from Minnesota DOT to be the MC for this one, and he's going to work with Todd as well on some of this topic today. So thank you, guys. We could not do this without your guidance and expertise. And if any of you don't like what happens today, talk to these three guys, not me. All right, let's get into a bit of what we're doing, what we're here for anybody that's new. This is for SSP managers and supervisors. We've tried to limit it to those that actually manage the program, not for drivers and not for vendors at this point. So usually DOT or Turnpike Authority or FHWA administrators will also join us on the call from time to time. So you're certainly welcome. We'd love to have that input as well. We can be reached through the website, safehighways.org. If you haven't been there, I think you should go there. We've archived all of the past sessions we've done, and we've got a chart there and some resources that we think will help you, and we're certainly open to your suggestions on how to improve that site. So you can reach us at ssp@safehighways.org. Oh, I'm not very good at web etiquette. Lauren, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Sam. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for joining.
Thank you. So I just wanted to just quickly run through. I know a lot of you are familiar with these calls. So throughout this call, there's going to be a variety of polling questions on your screen. We do ask, if you have not done so already, to please sign in through the polling question with your name, organization, title, and email. In addition, we also are, trying to make these sessions with a higher level engagement. So throughout the session, there's going to be opportunities for idea sharing in the discussion question chat box, which it seems everyone is also introducing themselves there. So that's great. So throughout the call, we encourage you to, if you have any questions for the speakers or for our side as well in terms of technical issues, we can address those questions in that box. Many of you are on mute at the moment. We ask that you please remain on mute until the open discussion segment towards the end. I've already touched upon the answering polling questions. Those will appear on your screen throughout the duration. So when those do appear, we just ask for your feedback. At the end of this session, we are going to do an open discussion segment similar to how we've done some previous sessions. So there's a couple different ways you can participate in that discussion. If you're dialed in through your phone, to unmute, you would select *#. Give yourself just a brief second, and then you're able to talk. You can also raise your hand, and our side will also be able to monitor that. We'll be able to call on you. Or if you would rather have John, who is our moderator, speak out some of your questions, you can also put them in the discussion questions box. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Sam to just give you an idea of what today's session looks like.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that. I'm going to get into the speaker introductions in a minute. And then we will have something we started at our last one, memorial and highlight our hero section. Obviously, our topic today is SSP training. So we're going to hear a lot about that. And the open discussion part is really what I want to talk in this intro about here. With COVID, a lot has happened to our country, a lot of it negative. But I'll tell you, there's one great thing for us that's come out of that, and that's this community has grown in size and in your ability to share or being vocal. So sort of the silver lining for us of COVID is we did 2 sessions just on that topic in April and May. We did Zoom meetings, and everybody on the call was able to contribute, and I really felt we sort of developed a much broader sense of community. And it is a small group here that we're working with. I see the same names coming to these, and greatly appreciate having you guys and want to create a place where you're comfortable reaching out to each other and learning from each other. And I'm seeing that happening more and more, and certainly want to continue that today. So we've got a little bit of a different format today than maybe you've seen on here in past. It's not the whole Zoom meeting, but we definitely are going to have plenty of opportunity for all of you to contribute. We're sort of taking a little bit off of the election theme here. Instead of having just presenter with their slides and then the next presenter with their slides, got a little bit of a debate maybe format going here. We're going to have a couple of people presenting together and bouncing off of one another with some different opinions or different ideas. And then in the spirit of the election, we definitely want you to voice your opinion. We want to hear from you. You'll get plenty of opportunity to do that in the discussion questions. As Lauren said, look for those. We're going to both have some polls as we've done before, but we're also going to drop some topics or questions into that discussion box. So we want to hear what you guys are thinking and how you do training. We know everybody on this call pretty much handles the training, and we're not saying there's a perfect way, right way. So again, in the spirit of community and sharing, we'd love to hear what you all think. Okay. Our speakers today, John McClellan, as I mentioned, is going to be our session moderator. John's been on our steering committee for years now, and he's got a great handle and opinion on certainly this topic and many others. And Todd Leiss, who's a TIM coordinator for Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission in true form. Todd, being the road warrior he is on his way to a training and has pulled over to be with us on this call. I'm especially honored to have what I'm going to say is an international expert on the topic here. Jack Sullivan runs the director of training for the Emergency Responder Safety Institute. If you don't already know about that, you're going to learn a good bit today, and I think it's going to be a great resource for everybody on this call in a lot of ways. Oftentimes we get presenters on here, and our challenge is getting them comfortable presenting. Jack presents a couple times a day, so our challenge here was just finding time in his schedule. So we're thrilled that he could make time for that. And Jack works closely with John Sullivan, who's actually a help responder in the Tennessee DOT. Similar last name, same last name, no relation, I'm told. But John represents the SSP group inside of Jack's organization, which is really just experts in different fields. So both John and Todd work closely with Jack. So it's just a privilege to have so much experience on this particular call and this topic. So I'm not going to take more time away from these guys. So I'm going to turn it over to John Sullivan to get us started. John?
Hey, everybody. Glad to see so many participants, and definitely proud to be here today. Speaking on the hero highlight section today, and it's just a situation that worked out in a positive way, and one of our operators was commended for his actions in a successful conclusion of a really dangerous situation. As you can read in the story here, this took place over a real short amount of time, and it was at night. The driver going the wrong way. Of course, when it first came out, we had no clue, what was going on. This driver at the conclusion, we did find out it was a lady that was suffering from dementia. She'd been missing for several hours that day. They did have a silver alert. I know most people are familiar with the amber alerts and silver alerts throughout the nation, and she had been listed on a silver alert and was lost and confused, and luckily a motorist spotted traveling the wrong way on the highway, and we were able to intervene, and Operator Jason White we were able to terminate this into a successful conclusion, and he was awarded this Commendation of Valor earlier this year. I think it was in April, and they were unable to presentation due to COVID, but he was awarded the commendation from the Metro Police Department, and we were just very proud of it. And we owe it all to the having direct line of communication with the Nashville Police Department. We work really closely with them, and we don't feel like it would have ended or maybe been as handled as well without the direct communication that we have with them. We've got such a partnership with them, and it's just it just went a lot smoother being able to talk directly to them versus trying to go back and forth through the dispatchers. And that's something we need to train more on, that resource, but we're fortunate in that regard. And we're very proud of Jason and his efforts that night. I happened to be right there with him, and typically it's one of those, we had to make a decision on what to do, and he knew what he could do and what he couldn't do. He was able to get ahead of her. Luckily, she was going at a fairly low rate of speed, and he was able to get ahead of her and stop the other lanes of traffic in the direction she was headed opposite in, and it just worked out really good for everybody. And we're very proud of his actions, and we just wanted to highlight him today and take a minute to, salute his efforts.
Thank you for sharing that story with us, John. And I see at the very bottom of our attendee list, we have Jason White on the call with us. So I just wanted to step in and just say thank you, Jason, for your efforts and going above and beyond. I appreciate that, especially in this instance, more than you know, as a caregiver myself. So thank you, Jason. Todd?
Yep. Okay. Everybody, I want to talk a little bit about the responders that we have lost this year. So far in 2020, we have lost 39 emergency responders. That's fire, EMS, police, towing, mobile mechanics, and safety service patrol operators. On the screen, you see 5 of the responders that we have lost since the last time we met, since our last webinar. Eric Irvin, Tristan Gother, Officer Brian Brown, Trooper Thomas Devin, and Captain Stan Elrod, and as well as the responders on the next page. Jose Zaninga, we don't have a photograph of him, Christian Herrera, Jason Willis, and just a few days ago, Roberto Garcia Jr. And again, all of us that work out on the highway know the dangers that we face. We want to try to share the photos and share a little bit about the operators that have lost their lives, or the emergency responders that have lost their lives. Again, we know the dangers. We just have to get the word out to the public about the dangers that we face. So just wanted to honor them. Again, remember also the people that have been struck and injured that are still here, and give some support to them as well. You can go ahead to the next slide then. You hear me okay?
John McClellan, you with us?
Sure. Yeah, I'm here. I wasn't sure. Sorry, I didn't remember if you were doing
Okay,
this.
sorry about that, John. Yep.
Yeah, no problem. So what we're talking about today is training. I think that's something that we probably all of us agree that training is important, but we'll talk about some of the challenges. And I think, just backing up a little bit, thanks to all the people that are in. I see there's 70 people called in. That's awesome. That the whole reason for this group and for these calls is for us to be able to help each other out. This isn't a sales pitch. This isn't, some of these presentations or some of these webinars where they're trying to get you to do something or somebody's trying to get you to sign up for something or buy something. I mean, this is for us and by us, and, part of the reason too for keeping it on the manager level is so that we can try to be frank, when we're talking about our own issues that we have, and if there's issues, you be able to talk about it. Maybe you learn something from another state that's similar, or at the very least, maybe you air it out, you say what the issue is, and maybe that helps you come up with some solutions for it. So, and some of these, it's not really about to brag either. And I know some of these other ones, there's some opportunity to brag, and if you got something that's cool, that's fine too. It's these meetings are for us and for us to be able to build off of each other and really to try to keep this industry moving forward and maybe coalescing if possible. And this is all going to be especially just one more thing to think about as we go into the next year, 2 years with budget shortcomings. And I know our industry tends to be one that comes up pretty quickly as a chopping block, and whether it's even saving real money or if it's just kind of a political way for somebody to say that they did something, it comes up. It's going to come up. So it's also another reason for us all to be here and doing what we can to move this all forward. So some of the challenges, I think, some of the challenges overall in training, this industry itself is so unique. I mean, who the employees are, I mean, contracted employees, state workers. If you're state workers, are you full-time operators? Are you maintenance operators that do this half the year? Are you maintenance people that bump in and this is another gig that you do other than doing maintenance work? Law enforcement. I mean, there's service patrols that are operated by law enforcement, but they're still doing very much the same thing that we are, or the same idea, the same service patrol concept. And there's even volunteer ones that are out there where it's actual volunteers that are going out and helping people with basic motor aid. Vehicles. I mean, the differences in vehicles. Tow trucks, pickup trucks. Minnesota, it's pickup trucks. Vans, walk-ins. Do you have red lights? Do you not have red lights? Do you have sirens? Do you not have sirens? Do you do TIM and motorist assistance, or do you just do one or the other? And there are programs out there that just do motorist assistance. They really don't even get into TIM. They're not allowed to block a lane. They don't have signboards, and they're not really set up to do it. And that's somebody else's job to do that. So that, I think, is one of the big challenges as far as training goes. And just expanding on that a little bit more, police and fire, like my wife's a Minneapolis firefighter, and so she can go, she went to Houston, she went to New York, she went to Los Angeles. I mean, yeah, there'd be some differences in terminology, there'd be some difference, maybe the equipment's on one side of the rig as opposed to the other side of the rig, but most of it's still going to be pretty much the same. It's going to be the same concept no matter where you are. The same thing if you're a cop. Yeah, there's going to be some different procedures, different terminologies, maybe some different protocols, but at the end of the day, a handcuff's a handcuff, a badge is a badge, a gun is a gun, and there's a lot more similarity. But for us as Service Patrol, on the Service Patrol side, there is so much difference across that trying to pull things out in training, and that comes into, if you're taking somebody else's training, if you're taking training that was developed in another state, some of the challenges in that is does it match your environment? Does it match your protocol? Does it match your procedures? But then that brings in another challenge. Well, so do you make your own training? And that also is, it's hard. I mean, if you develop training, it's hard. You need to be a good speaker. You need to be able to assess what the issue is. you need to, and then there's some technical part of it too, the ability to put together a PowerPoint and put the right information in there. Those are all challenges. And again, I'm just kind of expressing some of the challenges that we've seen in Minnesota. And I'll ask that, if you have, if I missed something, there's a challenge in your area, put it in the chat box, and we'll try to hit back on all of this stuff as part of the roundtable. If you think of something that, if you think of something, you don't want to forget it, put it in the chat box. Otherwise, when we go back around to the open mic, we'll talk about it. But I think these are some of the challenges overall. Some of the other things is that, well, we hire drivers. I mean, our operators are all independent-minded, right? The majority of the time, they're out there by themselves, and we rely on them to make the right call. They don't have a supervisor standing next to them telling them what to do. They're not following a instructional manual that says exactly what to do. We want them to be independent-minded. We want them to be self-sufficient and self-starters and have a good head on their shoulder. From a training perspective, the downside of that is, well, they all got an opinion on something. So now you try to do training on something, well, everybody's going to have an opinion on it, and making sure that doesn't devolve or get off course. So I know that's been a challenge for us on just even on some of the basic training stuff, is how quickly things can be kind of turned off, how quickly things can be kind of brought off the path. And another one too that relates into that is flexibility. You don't necessarily want guidelines or policies because of how variable the situation is. And so many situations that the service operators are going to be running into are going to be so different. I mean, yeah, you need some overall things, but man, you're going to end up with a 5,000-page manual if you're trying to do everything. And that we also know that that's not the way to go too. Time and logistics is another problem for us. We're a fairly small group. If we're fully staffed, that's 20 drivers, 10 for the morning, 10 for the afternoon. If they're in training, they're not on the road, and if it's over 8 hours, they're AFSCME, so that's overtime, so that's money. So if they're not, if they're in training, it better be worthwhile time, because if they could be out on the road doing something, and if they're not on the road, then there's holes in the metro not being covered. So I think those are some of the, just overall, hitting some of the highlights of some of the challenges that I've seen. Again, if you've got other challenges in your area, or if there's something I missed, and for sure if you've got suggestions on how you deal with it in your area, again, put it in the chat box or keep it in mind for when we come back around to the round table. Todd, did you want to add anything in?
Yeah, just one thing you said, John, I thought was a great point. If you make up your own PowerPoint for this, are we killing people at times with death by PowerPoint? A lot of the training, we want to do a PowerPoint, but depending on who the instructor is, if you do a PowerPoint and you have a number of people doing that training for you, how familiar is that person with their presentation, or is it somebody that's going to read every word on every PowerPoint slide? And, we've all been in those classes and in those presentations where your mind just shuts down because it's like, oh no, somebody's speaking very monotone and reading word for word. Well, we're all adults. We hopefully all could read, so don't do that as well. So that was a great point that you made, John, about the PowerPoints.
Yeah, thanks. And it also brings to mind too, just even the challenges with adult learners. That's a whole nother thing too, is I know in some of I did one of the MnDOT had some sort of basic thing on doing training, and in that she mentioned that 30 minutes, if you go longer than 30 minutes, people aren't going to remember it. So that's another challenge too that is to also keep in mind. Or I guess, depending on how you're doing it, people do better with hands-on, but is that practical? So I think those are some of the challenges. And those are just the ones that came to mind for me. Todd, do you want to talk about the facilitating?
Yep, definitely. So, when you're facilitating training, what are we looking for? And again, we want your feedback. This is part of, the interaction. So either put it in the chat box, what do you do? We cater our training for our participants. So we know what our agency does, what our agency does not do, and what we're permitted to do and what we're not allowed to do. Obviously somebody in Florida with an SSP program may be doing something entirely different than what somebody in Minnesota is doing. You don't really plow a whole lot of snow in Florida, hopefully. So, you want to make sure that you cater your training. So even if you take something off the shelf or off the box, the Federal Highway Traffic Incident Management course, customize it for what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Define what the purpose of the training is. Are we training just to train? Are we training to learn a specific skill, or what are we doing with that training as well? And have a goal in mind for doing that training. Are we trying to cut down the number of struck by incidents? Are we trying to cut down on roadway, opening up the roadway? One of our agency's goals is, and I'm sure every agency, and our safety service patrols are our first responders, but our goal is obviously to clear the roadway and clear the incident safe quick clearance as quickly as possible. So we've cut that down by half hour, but from where we 5 years ago, but we're not satisfied with that. So we're always looking for that. Plan for more than just a day. If I do a training session, how are we sure that the employer, how do I ensure my SSP worker is incorporating that? Do we have any follow-up with them? Do we ask them their opinion after we get done with the training of, when I get done with one of my trainings, I ask the people, tell me, if it was good, if it was bad, whatever, let me know, give me some feedback. That's part of the communication cycle, message, medium, senders, receiver, and feedback. Give me some feedback for that. Set the scene. Let them know in advance what the training's going to be about. Am I going to train for, like John said, 30 minutes? Am I going to train for 2 hours? And what's expected from them from the training? And if you want feedback during that training, ask them and tell them that you'd like to have that feedback. Go over the ground rules for that training as well, and talk about follow-up. How am I going to follow up with them? Am I going to send them a survey? Am I going to send them an email? Or, am I going to talk to them in person, hopefully, or give them a way to contact me and tell me, what kind of training they think they need in the future? That's very much a key as well. You go to the next slide. John, did you have anything on that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I guess just adding into a couple of the, one of the, in this may kind of be hitting on this too, is that a couple of the ones, we're doing our first aid CPR training actually tomorrow, and they're doing that in the bay area, in the garage bay, for the social distancing, and that's a requirement to do that every 2 years. So that's a required training. So you can justify in that case that they're going to be off the road. We're basically not going to have any coverage for several hours because they're going to be in there doing their first aid training. Something else that we've done, and I'm curious if other folks have done this, is the defensive driving, where you're actually driving a vehicle out on a skid pad. We did that a few years ago, and I think the drivers enjoyed it. One of the challenges is that there's a really nice one. There's a really nice driving course, but it's about an hour and a half drive from the metro, which means that's a whole day where they're not going to be out on the road. And it's also expensive, even though it's kind of a state-run thing or a state college-run thing. It is really expensive. And there's another smaller one, a little bit more moderate one, that's run by one of the counties that we're probably would be using, and it's still not cheap, but it doesn't allow quite as much flexibility. So curious if other folks are doing physical defensive driving classes like that. That's what we found. Todd, are you guys doing anything like that?
Yeah, I think so. We, for our safety service patrol, we're a little bit different. We don't give first aid training because we don't want our employees out there necessarily providing first aid. We have contracted EMS along our 552 miles, so I don't necessarily agree with it, but again, it's above my pay grades. But so yeah, I think we try to find that mix between in-person training. The meeting I was at this morning, we maintain social distancing. We had it in, like you said, in a garage bay where we're able to have the chairs 6 feet apart from each other. Everybody was masked up, and we had hand sanitizer around. So you try to adapt and make it a little bit more flexible if you can.
And I think what we were hitting on with this slide is, the training that you do for new operators. I know for us, a lot of the training is when they first start, and we try to hire people because we're a full-time state-operated service patrol. We try to hire people who come from a towing background, so they already have some mechanical experience, or maybe a first responder background, so that we know that they have some experience in dealing with the public and dealing with crisis situations. I imagine this has got to be different if you're a contracted program and how you do training, or for maintenance, if you have maintenance people coming in and how you're doing training who may not necessarily automatically have both of these. For us, a lot of our training is on the job when they first get started, and they basically ride around with several of the drivers to try to kind of get a flavor from different drivers and let the various drivers give them their input on what they see and their suggested operations. So that's how we end up doing a lot. We don't have a class, an academy, something like that, and really not a lot of say written or classroom type presentations. But again, we're a fairly small group, so that's going to be something that's going to be different for Minnesota. But I imagine for some other areas, it's going to be a little bit more, maybe a little bit more rigorous, or a little bit more, I don't know, paper-driven maybe, or specific. I think with the specialty training, Todd, I suppose that's looking for tow operators, things like that. Well, I guess they're like you said,
Yeah.
with the first aid.
Yeah, I think, sometimes, are we training on something very specific? I know we bought some new fire extinguishers, some foam extinguishers, so, do we kind of do that kind of training? And that wasn't necessarily for our safety service patrols, but still we want, there may be a reason why you need to have a specific type of training like that, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. I'm curious from everybody too, you put in the chat box, do you take into account that your safety service patrol operators maybe tell you what kind of training they're looking for? Are they looking for something that we haven't provided and maybe not even thought of providing for them as well? Is there some technology out there that we could give them to make their job easier that would be worthwhile? And like John said, when you're training your SSP operators, and if you're taking people off the roadway, that's a challenge. How do you balance that, especially with budgets being cut? How do you afford to do that? So I'd be willing to get people's thoughts about that as well.
The training to avoid complacency that brings to mind that we have, MnDOT records its traffic cameras, so I have plenty of videos of situations where our first drivers did something that maybe wasn't the best choice choice to do at the moment. The problem is that being a very small group, if you show that a lot of this video would be great for training, say, hey, watch out for the complacency, don't do this, but everybody's going to know what driver that is, and even if it's a year later, they're all going to know what driver that is, and chances are, probably a good chance that driver's already been talked to in other circumstances about not doing dumb things, and now you're setting yourself up for a harassment complaint and getting a call from HR because, you've identified this driver and you're calling him out. So that, what would be, I guess kind of spinning off on a thing here, but boy, if there were other states that had collections of video of their drivers doing goofy stuff, maybe there's an opportunity to trade where, at least in that case, here's some video of some service patrol drivers doing dumb stuff, but at least nobody can say that it was the guy in the room. So if somebody wants to expand on that one, very few states record their traffic cameras, so that might be a harder one to get to. But that's been another challenge for us, is that there's been a lot of opportunities. We said, man, that'd be great training video to show, but we just can't, because we know it will it will lead to a situation that's going to spin out of control pretty quickly and not be positive necessarily, or even get in the right lessons that you want, or even for the rest of them to even learn from it in an appropriate way and just say, well, yeah, that guy's an idiot. I'd never do that. It's like, well, that's not the point either.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, John. And we do the same thing. We don't record our traffic cameras. We've had a couple instances with emergency responders that did something that we took a snapshot or a screenshot and made it a teaching experience out of it, with those still photographs. But, even, trying to get a scene size up from somebody, maybe what you could do is if you have some photos of the incident scene, doing some of the training and even some of the new training or later training is, what do you see here? What would you report if you pulled up on this before you got out of your vehicle? What's your windshield scene size up? And maybe offer some kind of those training. Sometimes those kinds of training and exercises and talking about scenarios are worthwhile in learning. And a lot of times that if you do that in a roundtable discussion, again, if you have people together to be able to do that, it lets the older, more experienced responders be able to guide some of the younger ones and or have the younger ones say like, well, why would you have done it that way? What about doing it this way? And they could explain, well, this is why. We're blocking left, we're blocking right, we're trying to do this. If you're even using your responders for blocking vehicles, that may be a good thing to try to do as well.
And I think something, regarding the roundtable discussion, we've had a monthly, well, actually it was every 2 weeks meeting where all the drivers, and they're all there. It's during right in the middle of shift change, so there's a 1 hour meeting that all the drivers are part of. And the problem with that, if you did it 2 times a month, there really wasn't enough material to cover, so that could quickly devolve into something else. And even the monthly one, unless there is a pretty structured, this is something that we found, unless it's a very structured training time, with minutes being accounted for and people kept on track, that can devolve into specific situations as well that aren't necessarily appropriate, or there's even enough information to even talk about in a group. So one of the things that one of our supervisors said, that ideally he said 5 people would be the ideal size to do training in, just from span of control, that you can keep people on track, you can kind of keep the side things and the bullying, the ganging up on somebody down. Practically speaking, for us, that's a little bit of an issue, because that's, even with 5 drivers, the logistics of that still ends up being kind of complicated since they're not out on the road at that time. But that was something that was suggested. Todd, do you do bigger groups or do you do smaller groups?
I think if we do an after-action review, we do larger groups. But again, I definitely could see what you said. You get some of these groups together for a roundtable, and where does it go from a learning experience to just a complaint session and gets off topic? So I think you need to make sure you try to keep them on point and talk about what went good, what went bad. As we do those, we've had, if we do an after-action review, and we do them quite frequently, and again, even this morning whenever I talked to our maintenance staff, I said, we're not doing the after-action reviews to point fingers or get somebody in trouble. We're doing them to understand the process of what do we need to change, rather than, to correct you for right or wrong. Obviously, if we see somebody doing something dangerous that's going to put themselves in jeopardy, we're going to correct that, but that's not the point of our after-action review. So, and we use some of the after-action reviews as some of our teaching topics as well. But again, like you said, you have to caution using video or something from an actual incident where you're going to offend somebody, or, place yourself in a hostile work environment or a harassing type situation. If that, so I like your idea about being able to exchange some photographs or videos, or even scenarios with other agencies, so that you could still have some real life incidents and be able to share them, and not have that uncomfortableness of pointing out an issue that one of your employees may have done, and then have them feel like you're disrespecting them or whatever.
Yeah, we had one where it was probably as close call as you are ever going to get without it being a fatal or a serious. The driver was literally a second away from, stepping out of his truck, and a vehicle didn't move over and basically took his door off right out of his hand. Second later, it'd be a very different video. But there was also some realistic things were raised about, well, he was parked awfully close to the shoulder line, and the driver that was coming up was blocked by a semi, and there was even some discussion with one of the troopers about whether that driver could be cited with whether that driver could even be cited with a failure to move over, because it really may not have been practical with the amount of traffic that was out there. But it's compelling video, and it would be good training, but it's something that we would have a hard time doing in our sessions, just because it's one of the drivers, and whether that's taken in a mature fashion showing the video or not. But if there's other things like that are out there from other states, it's an interesting thought. So I think, so we look at some of the different ways that training can be done. MnDOT has a ton of online training that a lot of it's required training, so a lot of what we're doing is the required MnDOT training, and a lot of that is nothing to do with the service patrol. It's just department-wide training that has to be done, that's been mandated. We don't do very much classroom training. The hands-on, and I'm curious too to hear from other folks. I mean, for hands-on, we'll have the drivers, especially when it's somebody new, we'll have them get the feel of pushing a vehicle around, pushing one of the other trucks around. And a good idea was mentioned that also having them be the one to be pushed, so that they can feel what it's like to be pushed, to get that in there. And do you do that, more than once when they first start, or do you do that, every couple of years, just kind of as a refresher? But for the hands-on, you also kind of want to make sure that you're not giving a first aid class to a bunch of doctors. You want to make sure that what it is that they're doing is something that's actually going to be useful. And if it's really targeted at one guy who's screwing it up, do you need to subject all 20 people to basic Band-Aid application when it's really just one guy that needs it? But then that cycles back into that whole thing of, well, he's being singled out. So using the doctor analogy, but yeah, the multidisciplinary, that's an interesting one. We've done some open houses, some big public safety open houses where we've had a truck, and that's good. It's good exposure. There isn't much to see at our first shop as far as the tour goes. I mean, it's basically a garage and a room, so not too much fun there. Todd, do you guys do tours?
Yeah, so a lot of things what we do, even for hands-on training, to go back to that one for a second, does your agency do tabletops? Something simple as putting some Matchbox on a map or something there, and talk about where to position and what to do there. We do that. I have about 200 Matchboxes. I have, I think, about 20 or 30 different scenarios for maps that we do, and try to do that. And people love to play with Matchbox cars, so it works out great. It gives them a feeling that they're actually doing something, and doesn't cost you a lot of time and a lot of money. But yeah, we do some multidisciplinary training, and we do shows. I call them meet and greets. So again, we have 552 miles of roadway. Each of our 22 maintenance sheds runs a safety service patrol out of our maintenance. So it's 24/7 operation. We're sponsored by State Farm. And it's great because then you could have your other responders, and not necessarily have it open to the public, but have the other responders come out there where they meet your safety service patrol face to face. And then we could have our responders show the police and the fire, the EMS, what's on their rig, and do the same thing. Has a police officer ever lifted a hearse tool, a jaws of life tool? Has a fire company ever seen close up some of the things that the police officers use for their investigation? And you do that show and tell kind of thing, and it makes it nice because then you see what the other discipline has to go through. If you haven't ran with the fire company, I've been a firefighter since 1982, and you haven't picked up one of those tools to extricate somebody from the car, you may not realize that some of those are about 75 pounds. So can you lift it and effectively work that until you get a chance to lift it up? Do you realize how heavy chains are from a towing company, from a heavy wrecker, dragging the shackles and that kind of stuff, and the J-hooks and pulling the wire rope? It is, gives you a whole new appreciation a lot of times. So that's really what we do for some multidisciplinary stuff. Again, we usually this time of year we bring people into our maintenance sheds. We won't be doing that because of COVID, but that's why we like to do our meet and greets and get everybody to know each other as well.
I like the idea of the tabletops, and I can see that for us, especially if it's that smaller group, and maybe there's the opportunity there to kind of remove, especially if it's a specific thing or a specific scenario, there's maybe the opportunity to at least, get away from the specifics of that scenario or obfuscate it enough that it's no longer about one person screwing up. It's a little bit more general and it's a little bit more generic, so that might be a way to do that, and especially with a little bit smaller group to be able to keep it on focus. When you do those meet and greets, how many of your is that just the supervisor who does the meet and greet, or how do you handle that?
No, usually, again, it's good because we have, our maintenance sheds in the wintertime are staffed 24/7, so we'll probably have that operator be back there at the shed so that he can meet with everybody, but then one of the other guys that are working that shift may take another truck and go out on the road with it, so that they're out there. And again, with us being 24/7 operation, usually when these are, they're on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon where traffic volumes may not be real heavy, because we're out there all the time. So that's why we try to do them. The tabletops are nice too, because even if you don't have, as many maps and as many cars, I have a lot of cars because I keep going on eBay, seeing something and think, oh, I got to have it. My wife hates whenever eBay shows up at my house because I'm buying more Matchbox cars. I tell them, well, it's a work research, so. But yeah, you don't have to have you don't even have to have any cars. The National Tim's course gives you paper cars you can cut out and use them on a map, and there's other resources you could use without having to have the actual cars, but it makes a good conversation. And we actually use our tabletop exercises for our construction engineers and our construction inspectors for giving them the plans for setting out a work zone and having them place the signs and where to put your early warning at and those kind of things. So that's something you could even do with your tabletop exercises. Is say, if I have an emergency here, where am I going to put my early warning at? Where do I want my cones at before the incident? So again, that they're not just focused on the scene, but they're working, okay, half mile back, I could put out a cone here or put some early warning out here or my sign and still go to the scene and be able to provide some traffic control there as well.
And thanks everybody for, I see the discussion pods getting well populated. So thanks everybody for putting that in, and we'll cycle back around to that after the round table, or after the Sullivans have spoken. We'll come back in on the round table to discuss some of the items more deeply. And I think with the on this slide, I think you covered, Todd covered that with talking to the other responders. That's a neat idea. I like that idea about having some of the other responders come in. It would be interesting to do that. Fitting it to your agency, it has to, and I think that's one of the challenges in taking other folks' training, and like I mentioned before, is that if it doesn't match your environment, if it doesn't match your procedures, doesn't match your protocols, is it even worth doing it, or are you potentially even setting yourself up for more problems down the line too? If somebody says, well, you told us to do that. No, we specifically told you not to do that, but they forgot the not part 6 months later.
They always seem to think about that forgot part, whenever you're doing this, so yeah. And for everybody that's on this call, John and I and the steering committee and Sam, we talked about this while we were planning this call. And again, we talked about even the Sharp 2 training you get from, federal highway, and it has a lot of great information in it, but it's not good information if it's not something that your agency permits or doesn't really apply to your agency. It goes counter to what you want your patrol to do. So make sure that you're addressing that during the training. Take that slide out if you're using the PowerPoint, or make sure you put your own information in there. You're able to modify that slide. And again, we're not asking you to go and change the whole course, but or even break that out. We're going to hear from ResponderSafety.com. They have great modules on very specific things, but make sure even when you're doing those modules, that you're going through and reviewing them before you say, go out and take this module, and make sure it addresses exactly what your agency wants to address when you're doing that.
And the training during COVID is a real challenge for us. And this is something I think that is going to be different from state to state, because every state has different rules regarding lockdown. Minnesota is the state government has been very strong towards the lockdown and keeping things separate very stringently, and that's going to be different in other states. So our ability to, we really don't, other than the mandated MnDOT training that's been assembled by a training unit, we don't really have any online training to do, which I'll be nice to hear from the Sullivans on some of the resources that are out there, and we can see whether so we can look at those. But social distancing is a big one, and it's a big one in Minnesota, maybe, but other states are going to be different.
Yeah, we've been adapting. We've been doing some of our TIM training actually virtually online using Microsoft Teams or WebEx, and it works fairly well. As long as the agency that you're providing that training for is set up to do that. They have the internet connection, they have the microphone, the camera, so we can see everything that's going on. But the one thing to remember too is if they're all meeting at the firehouse to take your training, are you really social distancing? And how does that play into what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and for Minnesota, we're not allowed to do any in-person visits unless I think it had to be approved like commissioner or deputy commissioner level. It was very pretty high up.
Yeah, that's the same for us. We have to get approval on a case-by-case basis.
So I think these are some of the modules that are going to be talked about that are available on ResponderSafety.com.
Yes. So yeah, I wanted to give sort of an idea. ResponderSafety.com, I think we're up to 42 or 43 modules, and Jack could say for sure. But these are some that may be worthwhile. Again, you register for the site. It's free training. It's high quality training. We spend a lot of time vetting the training as well, but make sure it's specific that makes it relatable to your organization. If it's not something that's going to be relatable that you could do and allow your responders to do, then obviously you don't want to give that module out. But there are some that I thought were fairly new or fairly that would apply to safety service patrol. So you can check them out. Advanced warning, blocking procedures on the highway if you're allowed to block. Innovative traffic control devices, that one just came out, I believe, yesterday or the day before. Jack could talk to you more about that. Move it and work it. A big one for me is seeing be seen at emergency lighting awareness. Do we have too many lights out at some incident scenes? Do we have every light on in our vehicle? And with LED lights, are we actually making things worse for ourselves by blinding other drivers coming up there? And then termination, where we have a lot of accidents when we terminate scenes as well. So that's often the most dangerous time when you're starting to pick your stuff up. So.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things in the chat box, it was mentioned that a majority of or it was in the chat that a majority of folks are doing in person for the training. So if you are doing in person, just curious how you're doing that or how you're accommodating for COVID restrictions. And put it in the chat box, or we can call on you again in the roundtable after or a little bit later on. But are you a strict social distance state, or is it a little bit more relaxed? Are you doing it with masks? If you're doing it in person, I'm kind of curious to know how that's working, and if you anticipate that you'll still be doing that in a couple of more months too, which I think will be another challenge as we move ahead. All right. Well, Todd, do you have anything else you want to throw out from where we were?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to one thing you said on a few slides earlier. You talked about the, going and doing some training at a training facility, either a state-run facility or something nearby. I'd be curious for some of the other participants on this call, do you have a facility that you could use for that, or are you building or anything in the plans for that? I'd be interested to know what people are doing. We're working on a facility in Pennsylvania called PennStart that we're planning for about 110-acre facility with a track and different scenarios that we could set up, a high-speed roadway with multi-lanes all the way down to a rural road configuration. So if anybody wants to learn more about that, that's at pennstart.org, and hopefully we'll keep moving forward with that as well.
Yeah, good luck. I think a few other states have done similar. I think Iowa was looking at something, but I don't know how far that's gotten ahead of trying to do that. And like I mentioned, one of the challenges for us is that there's a pretty decent training facility, but it's just so far outside of the metro that the drive time to get to it, and then now you're down to 4 hours, 5 hours of actual training time, and then the drive back, it gets to be, there's a little bit of a challenge in using this particular facility. But then that's also is intended as a statewide facility, so they put it in the middle of the state. So it's inconvenient for everybody, basically. But
yeah.
But at least it's equal, though.
Well, and one of the things too is then, do I have to take some of my equipment there to train there? And now is that equipment also unavailable for, my patrol or whatever I'm working on? So it's something else to take into account.
Yeah, that's true. And with especially now with COVID restrictions, we're limited to how many people can be in a vehicle. I think we're allowed to have 2 now in a vehicle. Before it was only 1 person per vehicle. Although, so that you still end up having you're still going to end up having to drive several trucks up there, and they wouldn't be available to be out on patrol. So then that's always that trade-off. Is the benefit of the training outweigh the taking the resource away? And I think that's different than a lot of other, it's different than fire departments, different than police departments that may do their training. Fire department that does their training, but they're still all on duty and they can go out. It's harder to do that with law enforcement. If law enforcement's out on patrol, and we depend so much on our service patrol to be out there on patrol and looking for things and being quick to be able to respond and being out there. I will turn this at the top of the hour now. I'll turn this over to the unrelated Sullivans. Jack and John, and they'll talk about they'll give their bios. But it's really cool that you guys are here, and really appreciate it. And it benefits all of us on the service patrol side. Because I remember the years of challenge here in Minnesota. It even just getting our folks to be acknowledged as being part of the team, part of the emergency response team. So I think this is the next progression in that to have you guys here and to have this being part of ResponderSafety.com and being part of the institute. So thank you, Jack and John, for your time.
Thank you. Proud to be here.
All right, everybody. I appreciate those comments, and I'm your biggest fan when it comes to safety service patrols. We'd like to have more of them, more frequently, and in more places. So the more we can get, the better. My name's Jack Sullivan. I spend a lot of time these days in retirement working on a lot of materials for the Emergency Responder Safety Institute. I started out as a firefighter in 1972. I'll let you do the math on that. And I worked in 3 different fire departments because of my full-time career job that moved me several times. I started out in Pennsylvania in Paoli and was deputy chief of that department when I was transferred to Richmond, Virginia. I ran with the Chesterfield Fire Department and EMS for about 5 years before we got transferred back to Pennsylvania. And then I was a lieutenant and safety officer in Lionville Fire and Rescue up near the Downingtown interchange of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I spent 40 years working on safety and loss control in the insurance industry, in the public and private sector, helping a variety of different agencies and businesses on all kinds of property, workers' comp liability, product liability, fleet safety, and things like that. And for the last 22 years, I've volunteered my time working with the folks at Responder Safety, which is the Emergency Responder Safety Institute. We are a committee of the Cumberland Valley Volunteer Firemen's Association, and spent about 10 years plus at this point working with the National Committee on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. I'm a contract master instructor for Federal Highway on their TIM Train the Trainer program that we deployed over the last 7 years or so. And I do a lot of training for emergency services and emergency responders through the ResponderSafety.com network, in-person training and things like that, that, as you all know, came to a screeching halt in March of this year. So normally I'm jumping on an airplane and traveling someplace in the country. And this year that kind of faded away to almost nothing. I was scanning through the list of attendees today, and I see some names that I wanted to do just a quick shout out to. John Leonard in Utah, who works with us on the National Committee of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. John, wake up, pay attention now. I see we got Robert and Sterling from VDOT. Since I live in Virginia now, I'm always haunting those folks and making their life miserable on some things. Nick in Pennsylvania, Upper Merion Township Fire Police. Gosh, I wish we had more fire police folks that were participating in the safety service patrols, because when you think about it, for those of you who are familiar with them, safety service patrols in the rural areas is pretty much the fire police from volunteer fire departments in about 14 or 15 states that we know about in the United States. Raquel in Georgia, the Time Task Force. I don't know, I'm beginning to think maybe she's stalking me right now. I spent yesterday with those folks, and they just had their conference the last couple of days. Brian Purvis and I have crossed paths on a number of these things. He's working with AECOM down in Georgia. And I see Jeff Council from Illinois has signed on. Jeff has been doing a great job of tracking some secondary crashes this year and has some good data. So it's good to see some familiar faces and names in the attendee list. I probably missed a few of you. Nick in PA, make sure you shout out to Chief Rubin for me. Tell him I said hi. John, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people who you are?
Hey everybody, how you doing? Proud to be here again. Like I said, I'm John Sullivan. I'm a Highway Response Supervisor 1 with Tennessee DOT Help Unit. I supervise weekend shift, so I work Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I'm also a lieutenant firefighter in my community here at Pegram, Tennessee. Been with them for about 10 years, and I like Jack said, I kind of picked up on this responder safety network through the fire service, and saw the relationship and wanted to bring us more to the forefront as far as safety service patrols were considered. Like he said, I echo his sentiments on like to see more involvement, and worked hard over the years to ensure that we have a voice among the responders, and I feel like we really do at this point in time. It's taken a long time to get to that point, and but I know we are well recognized, and I just want to keep that momentum rolling with that. And like Jack said, I love seeing so many participants, and anything I can add or contribute, just proud to do it. And the Responder Safety Network is a vital resource for safety service patrols. Like I said, I first got into it with through the fire service, but once you see the relationship, it's all the same, and the training's so valuable, and it covers all responders.
All right, so let's jump into some of the stuff and maybe help some of the people who are not familiar with the Emergency Responder Safety Institute. I mentioned we're a committee of the Cumberland Valley Volunteer Firemen's Association. The reason that we even got involved with this particular subject goes back to the year 1998. And the reason that I am involved with this particular subject is because I retired from the fire service in the mid-90s. And shortly after I retired from the Lionville Fire Company as a lieutenant and safety officer, they were involved in a secondary crash on the Pennsylvania Turnpike involving 10 of our personnel. 8 firefighters and 2 EMTs from the Euclid Ambulance Corps were struck by a tractor trailer who went out of control as they approached a very minor, almost what a lot of people refer to as a routine motor vehicle crash on the turnpike. The tractor trailer overturned and swiped through the crash scene, the initial crash scene, and struck 10 of our personnel. 8 firefighters, 2 EMTs. One of the firefighters, Dave Good, did not survive that incident that day. And frankly, in 1998, in the fire service, roadway incident safety, traffic incident management, call it what you will, was not a subject that was a hot topic for the fire service. And as a safety officer in that department, where I had helped to train those folks on fire department related safety issues prior to me departing, that hit me pretty hard at the time. It was kind of like, geez, did I miss something somewhere along the way? Were we supposed to be talking about roadway incident safety? What do we got to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And here we are 22 years later, and I've got myself up to my neck in roadway incident safety and traffic incident management at this point, and I'm frustrated because we can't seem to solve this problem. It seems like the struck by incidents and secondary crashes are coming fast and furious at this point. And John and Todd will tell you there isn't too many days that go by that we don't get a notice of a struck by incident involving some sort of responder. We initially started out concentrating on the fire and EMS community because that's where our roots are. But we learned along the way that this is a team sport. We've got to get everybody involved in this particular subject. We can't do it by ourselves. So we started to reach out to the law enforcement industry, towing industry, the DOTs and safety service patrols to learn everything we could about this subject. And even though our training seems to be heavily weighted toward the fire and EMS field, I need to explain that the reason for that is because that's primarily where our funding comes from. We have been very fortunate in getting grants from FEMA and the U.S. Fire Administration over the last 10 years or so to put together some of our resources. We would love to do more for the towing industry and SSPs. Problem is that we can't use fire service money to do training programs for towing, law enforcement, and safety service patrols, but we'd like to be able to do more if we can find the funding for it. So we kind of have an informal advisory panel of public safety folks from around the country representing all of these different disciplines that we reach out to and use on a regular basis for a variety of things that we do. So what is it that we do? Key initiatives that we've been involved with over the last 22 years. We were part of the group on a nationwide basis that put together the National Unified Goal. I hope most of you are familiar with the National Unified Goal at this point. Obviously looking at responder safety and safe quick clearance as the 2 primary goals. It sounds very simple when you say it that way, but I was involved in the 2.5-day long meeting in California back when we were first trying to develop the National Unified Goal. And at that particular point in time, that meeting stands out in my mind because we went through 2 days almost of the group being separated on 2 sides of the room. We had fire, EMS, and towing and recovery folks sitting on one side of the room, and law enforcement and DOT personnel sitting on the other side of the room. And the conversation for the first 2 days went just like this. Close the road, open the road. Close the road, open the road. Close the road, open the road. It wasn't until the second part of the second day that somebody finally said, there's got to be something that we can all agree to that we can move this issue forward. And the one thing that everybody could agree to was that we all wanted to go home safe at the end of the day, the responder safety aspect of it. And that's why it's the #1 bullet on the National Unified Goal. We've been very much involved in helping to promote move over laws around the country and to provide information on that. We were big proponents of wearing high visibility apparel before it was cool. I'm not sure that it's still cool, but at the same time, we know that that's one thing that's helping to save lives out there. We got involved with the subject of traffic incident management when Federal Highway coined that term and started to push that subject. I would very much tell you that my job, my focus, my goal is actually on the responder safety aspect of it, more so than the congestion relief and keeping the lanes open. I want to make sure that we're protecting our responders first. And what I've always said is if I can protect my personnel on the street, we'll get the incident cleared up quickly and get out of your way just as quickly as possible. But we've got to be able to protect the responders on the street. We've been involved in various committees and standards making organizations on emergency vehicle standards, guidelines, and features, whether you're talking about high visibility chevrons or emergency lighting, the graphics that are on some of the emergency vehicles and things like that. We've participated in the discussion process and the formulation of those goals and standards. I've spent an awful lot of time putting together the Responder Safety Learning Network. Todd's mentioned that a couple of times. We've got over 40 modules that have been developed over the last 10 years at this point, all dealing with the subject of roadway incident safety. All aspects of it goes into more detail than you learn in the 4-hour TIM program from Federal Highway. It's not to say that one program is better than the other. We just go into more detail on more individual subjects than what you can cover in the 4-hour program from the Federal Highway TIM program. So I hope you'll take some time at some point and browse through our website. Doesn't cost you anything. We'll talk a little bit about some of the resources that are there for you in a second. A few years ago, we recognized that one of the things we have to do is provide better information, direction, guidance, training for the general public, those folks who are drivers out on the roadways these days. One common factor we see in struck by secondary crashes over and over and over again is the presence of a D driver. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then just recently, we started to develop a standard for TIM technicians. And we've got a professional certification process in place now, driven by the fire service primarily. The Pro Board, as we call them, are the ones that has provided the certification. It's based on the National Fire Protection Association Standard 1091, which is the professional qualifications for traffic incident management personnel. Now, even though it's an NFPA standard, National Fire Protection Association standard, the group that we used to put that standard together was multidisciplinary, and the wording in the standard is such that it applies to and is relative to all of the different disciplines involved with roadway incident safety and traffic incident management. So if you want to know what the average person should know from a training standpoint for traffic incident management and responder safety, it's really outlined very well, very quickly in an NFPA standard 1091. And I might have a little bit more time to talk about that as we go forward. In 2019, real quick, I wanted to review some numbers with you and why we're so frustrated by this particular subject. We lost 44 emergency responders last year that were struck and killed by vehicles while working at roadway incidents, 18 law enforcement officers, 14 towing and recovery operators, 9 in the fire and EMS field, and we were fortunate in 2019 we didn't lose any safety service patrol operators. Some of those fatalities were not line of duty deaths. One of the things that we've noticed in the last few years is an increase in the number of emergency responders who are off duty, who stop to assist someone on the side of the road, or who witness a car crash or a vehicle fire or whatever. And because all of us have it built into our DNA to help people, we have a tendency to stop and help when we see somebody in need, even though we're not on duty and have not been dispatched officially to that call. Unfortunately, some of those folks have been struck and killed while they were doing anything from helping to change a tire to attending people who have been injured in a car crash or attempting to extinguish a car fire. So the numbers that we track at the Emergency Responder Safety Institute record on-duty and off-duty personnel who assist at incident scenes. That's the common activity. When we look at the activities in 2019 where people were struck and killed, 17 of those fatalities happened at disabled vehicle incident scenes. 12 were motor vehicle crashes, 6 were traffic stops with law enforcement. There were another 6 law enforcement activities, could be a search for somebody, chasing a perp of some sort, maybe clearing off a fallen tree on a roadway or something like that. 2 were at fire scenes, and 1 was an EMT who was struck while she was working at an EMT standby for a demolition derby. You're pretty much not safe almost anywhere you step out of your vehicle at this point. Where are we in 2020? As of today, anyway, we're at 39 emergency responders that have been struck and killed. 15 of them were law enforcement officers, 17 are tow truck operators, 1 mobile mechanic. I don't think that number's right. I think we've actually had more than that on the mobile mechanic side. I'll have to check my numbers here. 3 in fire and EMS, and unfortunately we've lost 3 safety service patrol operators this year. So the numbers are running pretty close to what we saw last year. We had 44 last year. We're at 39 so far this year. We still got a couple of months to go. I fear that number will grow again this year too, and hopefully it won't exceed what we saw last year. And I got to remind you that we're just talking about fatalities here. This is not those crashes that have involved injuries to some of those responders, and some of those injuries are life-changing injuries, like amputations, legs amputated, arms amputated in some cases, other injuries like traumatic brain injuries that keep personnel from returning to their job. They might not be dead, but they're not working in that discipline anymore, and they can't work in that discipline anymore. There is no one unified collection point for struck by vehicle fatalities, injuries, and property damage only crashes nationwide. So although we try to track that as best we can at the Emergency Responder Safety Institute, I would tell you that any numbers we report by far are conservative. I know there are other incidents that are occurring that we never hear about, and the one area that I know we're deficient in are those crashes involving safety service patrol operators nationwide. When I talk to the folks here in Virginia and I hear how many safety service patrol operators have been struck or how many times their vehicles have been struck, doesn't make the news, doesn't make the popular press. We don't necessarily get a report on it. I would say those crashes are underreported and under-recognized by a lot of people in this industry. You'll hear me talk about data in just a minute. We need better data, and that's part of the issue. So don't forget that when we talk about these fatalities, there's probably 4 times as many secondary crashes involving injuries and or property damage to emergency vehicles that we just don't have a good handle on the numbers of. So we did a summit a couple of years ago in 2018. We brought together almost 40 practitioners from all the different disciplines, and we spent a couple of days talking about what has worked well over the last 20 years, what are we doing now, and what should we be looking at in the future. What's worked well over the last 20 years? We now have a growing cadre of champions for roadway incident safety and traffic incident management. 2 terms that were not in the day-to-day conversations back in 1998 are now much more common and much more in the forefront of a lot of people who work on the roadways. We've got a greater recognition of the importance of traffic incident management and responder safety training. We've seen some success on legislative initiatives like move over laws and now hands-free laws. Unfortunately, once we've got them, now we've got to enforce them, and we'll talk about that again in a second. We're doing a much better job of identifying and sharing best practices. Like this call today, this is a good opportunity to share best practices and what has worked well for you with others who do your job in other places around the country. This is a great opportunity to do that. And we've done a much better job over the last 20 years of creating and providing incident safety and traffic incident management training through a variety of different resources, which is a great thing. The one thing that the Federal Highway TIM program did was bring together all of the different disciplines together in one room in the same classroom to hear the same message, which is critically important and has been a big success nationwide to get everybody on the same page. So that's been critically important. We talk about the present and what hasn't been as successful. Data collection. Data collection is a real missing link right now. We need better data, and we need uniform reporting across all of the states, preferably pushing it up to the feds, who would create and give us an annual report. We've got to do something to modify the human behavior of D drivers. Those drivers that are drunk, drugged, drowsy, disgruntled, dragging, like dragsters or Dale Earnhardts, driving too fast for condition, or just the dangerous drivers that are out there. We give away driver's licenses far too easily these days for people who then jump in a vehicle that has far more capabilities than they do as a driver. And without a doubt, the most common causal factor that shows up in all of these secondary crashes relates back to D drivers of some sort. And of course, we've got these laws on the books right now, but we leave it up to the law enforcement community to enforce those laws. And they're already strained to the max in trying to get their job done. And it's getting worse day by day as we can see by some of the social initiatives going on around the country right now. How in the world can we expect them to enforce speed laws, move over laws, hands-free laws, and things like that if we don't have enough troopers and police officers out on the street doing that kind of stuff? What's in the future? What do we got to work on? When we put this group together and we came together and spent 2.5 days talking about it, the number one need that everybody agreed to was better data. We've got to collect, research, analyze, and share responders struck by vehicle fatalities, injuries, and near misses, and property damage, and near misses across all the disciplines in a unified way. And we still do not have a solution for that. I'd like to see each state take the responsibility for recording secondary crashes and struck by incidents and reporting it up to the feds so that we can gather all this information in a more formal way. We've got to get somebody to take the lead on that. I hope Federal Highway is going to follow through with that. They've got an RFP out right now on a new project to get a handle on this need for data, and hopefully that will improve things. We've got to continue to do training and education for our emergency responders and for drivers. We've got to do a better job of training drivers who are just the normal people who are coming up on our incident scenes out there. Teach them how to do what we want them to do when they approach an emergency scene. We've got to do a better job of that. The data will help us get additional funding to do those things that we want to do related to traffic incident management and responder safety. And the first thing anybody asks when we go with our handout looking for funding for new training or new techniques or new equipment or new temporary traffic control devices or whatever, first thing they ask is, how big a problem is this? And if we don't have the numbers to tell them, then they're really not, it's not that they don't want to help us, it just doesn't move us to the head of the line because we don't have the numbers to really get their attention. So the resources that we've put together on the respondersafety.com website. Number one, we provide news related to this subject. Line of duty deaths, struck by vehicle reports on various crashes that happen around the country to keep the subject in the forefront and to give you current news to use in discussions and training sessions with your personnel. We do have a function on the website that talks about near misses and connects you to a near miss database system for the fire and EMS community and for the law enforcement community. So there are near miss reports that are pulled together now that can be used in training classes. It's good information. It's readily available to you. You can snag it off the website for free. It's one of the resources that we provide. We've got a ton of online documents and resources and background material, reference materials, source materials that are on the website in the resources section. It's searchable if you're looking for a particular subject. We have spent an awful lot of time and grant money putting together the Responder Safety Learning Network. The 40 modules that are out there, we use experts from all the different disciplines, including safety service patrols, to help put together these sessions. And the money that we get from the grants put together the technology that runs the learning management system that is the Responder Safety Learning Network. You do have to register in the system so it can track your progress, but it does not cost you anything. It's free to anyone to use, and all of the materials have been put together with all of the current standards in mind, guidelines, directives, regulations, laws, rules, whatever the case may be. We always make sure we're as current as we can be, and the information is useful to just about everybody. We heard loud and clear there are plenty of people out there trying to do their own training, so we put together 10 roadway incident safety teaching topic packages specifically for instructors. Each one of those packages gives you a video, a template or outline for the class, all of the background materials for the class, exercise guidance, and reference material that might relate to that subject so that you can customize the materials to fit your need in your discipline or your agency. On top of that, we've also developed 10 short training videos that we call roadway safety shorts on a variety of different roadway incident safety subjects. They're short videos, they're less than 4 minutes each, but they all talk about a specific safety item related to roadway incident safety. And it's great to kick off a safety meeting or a toolbox session or something like that with your personnel take a look. They're all free. You grab them and use them as you want. We know we've got to do a better job of training the public. We've put together a variety of public service announcement videos that are free for you to use on your own website, your social media pages, in meetings with the general public or whatever, any way you want to use it. We have a whole page of public information resources that are available for you to communicate with the public about how to navigate around emergency scenes and things like that. And then last but not least, we put together liaison pages, including a page specifically for safety service patrols. And that's where John's been able to help us out with a number of different articles written from the perspective of a safety service patrol operator for safety service patrol operators that are out on the street. We invite any of you who would like to provide subject material for that liaison page, something that you could write, talk about, or demonstrate in some way related to safety service patrols. We'd love to have it, and we've got plenty of room on the website to add your content too. We are always looking for good content related to safety service patrols to add to that resource pile for everybody else to tap into. John, what did I forget? Is there anything that I missed in any of that?
You nailed it on the head, Jack. And like I just wanted to express to anybody that's not been on the site or seen it, this is some high quality content, folks. I mean, I couldn't speak days on this subject, but the way this Emergency Responder Safety Institute is set up, it's fresh, it's high quality content. Those training packages he talked about, I've used them in the fire service. I can use them with the safety service patrol. They go either way. They encompass everything. They don't miss a beat on these things. This is some high quality information, and I can't speak enough on the Responder Safety Network and the Emergency Responder Safety Institute. As far as responder safety goes, it's a no-brainer when you look at the content.
I'd add one last couple of thoughts based on some of the earlier conversation today. One is that one of the successful things that I've seen in the day and age of COVID are smaller classes face-to-face more frequently. So where you used to do one class for 25 or 30 people, now we actually have some folks that are doing a class for 5 to 8 people, but they're doing it more often so that they still get that same 30 people, but they might have to do the class 3 times to make it happen. So a smaller class more frequently kind of puts the pressure on the instructor to get to multiple classes, to get to the smaller groups, but that's one way to handle it. I can't emphasize enough how much in this business the importance of positive reinforcement to make sure that we're telling our folks, recognizing them for those things that they're doing that makes things better. We tend to follow up and make a big deal about when things go wrong, and we miss the opportunity for positive reinforcement in some cases. You would be surprised how far positive reinforcement can help get your mission accomplished if you continually recognize those people who are doing things well. The other thing I would suggest is on the tabletop exercises. I'm a big fan of tabletop exercises. Don't forget to use the tabletop exercise environment to review recent incidents that you've had. When things go bad and when things go well. Use it to reinforce when everybody works the way they should together to successfully bring an incident scene to conclusion without any disruptions or injuries or fatalities. That's a good thing. Let's review that from a positive standpoint and take some time to talk about when things go right, not just when things go wrong. I think those are a few training tips that have a lot of power in 2020.
Absolutely. I like to pass it up the line to my supervisors when we have a situation. Maybe it's a multidiscipline situation and something worked out well. I pass it on to my supervisors, or we take a moment to let them know, hey, this particular incident may not be an after-action review, but it's just a recognition to them of, hey, this situation worked out really great because of this particular point, and they absolutely take that to heart. And the next time they're right there. It's like you practiced it. It's just like training. When you have that positive reinforcement, like you said, Jack,
Absolutely.
it sticks
Big
with
time.
them.
All right, thanks, guys. Really, really appreciate your time. And before, so we'll go into the open discussion, and I guess before we get into what Todd and I were rambling about an hour ago, does anybody have any specific questions for Jack or John Sullivan? Call them out, or if you're muted, star pound to unmute. Does anybody have any specific questions for those two guys while we have them?
I would point out that Jeff Council has put in some interesting information in the chat box under discussion and questions. He's been looking at a large number of secondary crashes and recording some information that nobody else has taken the time to do. I think the data that he's collecting is going to be very valuable.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, thanks, Jack. I think that'll be interesting to see what the data shows. I know we've internally had our concerns with slow down and move over, and even some of the patrol has that there's concerns with some of the logistics of it, and I think every state also has fought with the same issues of just even how the legality of it is written, and it seems like in Minnesota it has to be changed like every 2 years in order to address some a legal concern or a legal thing that had the tickets thrown out. So I think that we'll look forward to seeing more from Jeff when this
I think that
comes out.
the move over laws around the country, they're so varied. We're kind of learning things the hard way on that. It seemed like a good idea 10 plus years ago when it first came up. But what I keep reminding people is the type of drivers that I was concerned about in 1998 when we had the crash on the Turnpike are very different than the type of drivers and type of vehicles that we're dealing with today in 2020. We don't have time today to go into the subject of semi-autonomous vehicles that are out there running around today, but there are a lot of things that have changed over the last 20 years, and what we may have put out there 20 years ago might not be the best for what we've got in 2020. Maybe we need to revisit some of these subjects periodically, do an evaluation, look at some hard data, and make some changes if necessary.
Absolutely, Jack, and I always like to throw in the D driver that gets left out sometimes, the disrespectful driver. It's a whole other breed. They may not be drugged or drowsy. They may be wide awake, but they're just disrespectful in their approaches as a driver. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of non-autonomous autonomous vehicles that are out there too. I see, looking at the videos that we have from the traffic cameras of responders and just of everyday crashes. You know, slow down, move over, and this is what I tell responders when I do the TIM training is, you know, slow down, move over is great for the drivers that are paying attention. It gives them a baseline of what to do and what to expect. But the driver that, like, say, doesn't care or isn't paying attention or is not on the ball, that ain't going to help you. So it's a good education piece for the public, but as responders, everybody has to be responsible for making good decisions to protect themselves as well, assuming that it's going to be 100%. Hopefully this, well, again, thanks again to Jack and John for your time. and responder safety has been a great resource. Hopefully everybody, if you haven't heard of it before, hopefully this is, or if you have, and this is a good reminder to check it out. And also to everybody on the line, this is a different format than what we've normally done, so hopefully this has worked for everybody. I know this is a little goofy, so hopefully it's not too goofy. Hopefully this is a good way to share information, and this was such a kind of a wide topic on training that this was a little different rather than just having, rather than having 4 people talk about how they train their department, kind of throwing this a little bit more wide open to say, here's some of the challenges, here's some of the problems, here's some of the difficulties, and then kind of circling back the other way to say, hey, do you have other problems? How are you dealing with those problems? This is a little different format, so also curious to see how if this worked, and I could see this maybe coming up for some other of these. And again, this is for us and by us. So if you have a topic that you want to that you think is important to get covered, throw it in there or email it to Lauren or email it to the group, and it can certainly get added in. This is to benefit us. So going back, looking at some of the questions in the chat pod, Brian had mentioned about training and with COVID, and I think and the online training, that it is difficult to do online training without knowing whether people are paying attention or not. You're basically just speaking into a computer or into a phone. I know one of the states had a couple of helpers who would throw together questions real quickly and kind of ping people to make sure they're paying attention, which is great if you have a crew of people who can do all that, who can help you with it. It is.
We require, for my training, I require them to have a microphone and a camera, and if they're not participating, I sort of prod them along and help them participate. Especially if I'm doing TIM training or something that I want to make sure that they're interacting with me.
And how many folks are you doing at a time in your TIM training?
It varies. I've had classes of 30 or 35 that have been spread out, and that's doing the 3.5 hour TIM course, or 4 hour TIM course with breaks or whatever. The thing that is distracting, though, is the one class I had, I swear a guy must have gained 20 pounds because he ate from the time I got on till the time I got done. I got diabetes from him secondhand. So he just did not quit, man. He was, I had to call him out on it later. It's like after a third bowl of ice cream, it's like, dude, but hey, he was at home on his recliner as long as he interacted. I mean, as he's shoving another piece of pizza in his face, but it was good.
Wow. Adam mentioned consistency across shifts, and if you have a statewide program, you have different regions. That's a good point for us in Minnesota. I mean, we're worrying about 2 shifts, but if you have, like a lot of states, you have multiple different districts or different regions getting out consistent training. Curious if anybody has some of these larger programs. Is there anybody who, how you're dealing with that? And again, you can star pound if you need to unmute. Otherwise, if there's, you can put it in the chat pod if you want, or we'll come back to it. Looking at some of the other questions here. Well, it looks like Missouri is doing, they're doing an EVOC training. And something else curious too is how many states are doing EVOC training for your drivers. And I think I mentioned that earlier with the Minnesota that is something that the drivers all found to be pretty positive about. But it is a little bit more labor and resource intensive, and it can be some expense. And then do you use your own trucks, which is ideal because that's what they're going to be in, but then are you risking damage to those and some of the other tails that can come in as well? Brian mentioned survey monkey polls with staff to get their feedback on what training. That's a great thought. To ask folks what they feel like they need training on. Seems like a good way to deal with with off-site training. And Sarah, you had a good point about taking advantage of construction closures and being able to work on a closed roadway to do setup, to be actually out in the field and doing the work in the environment. So that's a neat idea. Does anybody? I'll stop talking here again for a second if anybody wants to chime in on anything.
John, can I mention one that we're doing here in Tennessee? It was started by California Highway Patrol, and Tennessee's, I believe it's the Governor's Safety Highway Office, set up it's a responder distracted driving course. It's called Distraction Overload, and it's geared toward responders that are driving distracted. There's been so many incidents. I think law enforcement was taking the lead in that, and behind them, fire, and then EMS and being following us third. But it's just based on the responder aspect of being distracted with your NDCs and your phones and all your components of your truck or your vehicle. It's a really good class. It's maybe it can be tailored to an hour to 2 hour class, and we really enjoyed having that program. I don't know if any other states are looking at anything like that. I've trained my guys here at TDOT on it. Like I said, it was started through CHP, California Highway Patrol. I think in 2018 is when they started it. It's a really good class. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with that or have anything related to our own distracted driving as responders.
That's a good point. Is that something you can put a link to, or is there a link to that on respondersafety.com, or is there a link being put into it?
No, I was going to talk with Jack about it later. I don't know if I can. I think I could probably get a link, and like I said, it's something that the Tennessee folks tailored it for us, but it was done through the CHP program, so I'm sure there's got to be an original template to it to be tailored to any other responders. Because again, that's part of our safety too, and doing our job is the response and the patrolling that we do and the driving that we do. I know we're all guilty of it at some point. We try to do as much as we can, hands-free and things like that, but there's so many other distractions, not just the hands-free, but the cognitive parts of it that are distracting as well, and showing the hands-free devices are as being as distracted as driving impaired.
Yeah, for sure.
John Sullivan, if you get that link, I'm sure Lauren could share that out with the group a little bit later on as well.
Right.
I'd be curious if any of the safety services patrols are sharing or doing any kind of customer service training. The people that we meet every day out on the highway are our customers. Have we thought about that, or do you do anything? We interact with people a lot. Is it necessary, and do you feel it's necessary?
I absolutely do. I try to incorporate some of that into my weekly safety briefings. We've done a couple of customer service. I know on my part, it is definitely imperative to be working on customer service training as well.
Yeah, I see there's some comments in the box about that too, and along with a shout out for Tom Martin, the hats guy. Everybody knows Tom asks for his autograph, and bring that VHS tape out and ask for his autograph on it. Alan had mentioned. Go ahead.
If you buy Tom a beer somewhere at a conference, he'll also sign a cocktail napkin. He's not really particular.
He's a good. Alan had mentioned, if you want, you mentioned a classroom, on-site, and field training. I think I've heard that from a few other states doing pretty rigorous training. I think maybe Jason, I think Georgia does that too, don't you? With Hero, you do a pretty solid classroom training as well. And I guess that's either for Alan or for Jason. And how is that something that you can share, that training that you've done? I mean, it's be kind of curious to see how that's been structured, or if there's anybody else that has a written training, and not necessarily that it may be for a different type of patrol, but it would be interesting to see it. If you're willing to share it, that would be a neat resource to at least maybe spark some ideas. If you have training, if you have written training material that you're willing to share, I think that would be a neat resource if people are able to do that.
Yeah, Brian Purvis, I think Jack had mentioned, was on the call. Brian may have something good that they do as well. I think they have a good program, similar to what Jason has. Jason's being quiet, so he's up to no good probably.
Owen had mentioned also from Missouri had mentioned doing after-action reports with other agencies and hot washes with COVID. I know, I don't know. It's been difficult to do hot washes on anything, and that's even pre-COVID. It's been difficult just logistically to get everybody together to try to do after-actions. But are there folks out there that are doing regularly doing after-actions, with especially including other agencies? And if you are, how are you handling the COVID? Are you doing it online, in person, face-to-face?
Hey, John, this is Todd. We do after-action reviews at the Pennsylvania Turnpike quite often. And if anybody on the call is interested in seeing any of them, we actually make a written report, a public document, so I could share any of that out with everybody. We really have no secrets, but our after-action reviews have been very positive experiences. I know people get a negative perception of, oh, you're looking to hang somebody from doing an after-action review. Well, in my 21 years at the Turnpike, we never disciplined anybody over an after-action review. So we're changing processes. We're not necessarily looking to we're not getting anybody in trouble for doing these. We want to build and make things better. And the most recent after-action review we did was in the beginning of April, and that was for the mass fatality crash we had on the Turnpike with 5 fatalities and 60 injuries. And we did that remotely using WebEx, and it went quite well. We had 40 different participants from probably 10 different agencies on the call. Probably talked about hour and a half, 2 hours. It was very structured. I led that, and we gave everybody an opportunity to speak. So as we went through each topic, we sort of said, what's your input? And we were prepared for it with photographs with a timeline, and we walked through the incident and talked to each other, and we came up with some good points. We needed to do better with mass casualty incidents. We need to do better to protect the integrity of the scene. Some of those things came up.
That'd be especially interesting with the mass casualty and having the right approaches to that. That would be that could be an interesting discussion point for a future SSP. One of these SSPs, I guess maybe it kind of is more on the broader TIM side, but on doing after actions. All right, so we're up to the kind of the end of the roundtable time. I guess I'll stop here for a second if anybody wants to shout anything out. Otherwise, we'll head to the next section here. All right, Todd, you're up for EDC 6.
Todd, are you muted? Are you with us, Todd?
Yep, I'm here. Thanks. Yep, I was just bringing the PowerPoint back up. I'm out in my car doing this from the parking lot of a service plaza on the Turnpike here. So the next generation EDC 6 of TIM, Next Gen TIM, some of the points that we're talking about is expanding the geographical coverage. Again, we need to understand that TIM is not just about urban areas, it's about rural areas as well. We do have a rural TIM program on ResponderSafety.com, where Jack presented at the National Rural Roads Conference, I think. Again, Next Gen TIM also talks about reducing the incident clearance time and improving responder and traveler decision making. So go over to the Federal Highway site, Everyday Count 6. It's the latest thing. There actually was a meeting today for the EDC 6 Next Gen TIM that started at 1:30 that I was supposed to be on, but I'm on this call instead. But check out the website. You could Google it as well. So, yeah, Sam, I'm sorry.
Todd, no, while we have you here in Pennsylvania today, there was a lot of talk about the move over laws, and here in Pennsylvania today, I know there was a bill that passed that made it a little more stringent. I know you worked pretty hard on that, and it included some disabled vehicles. So can you give us an update on that news?
Yeah, so Pennsylvania, I just had gotten a call right before we got on here from the senator's office that they expected the bill to pass to enhance the Pennsylvania's move over law. What that does, there were some amendments added to the original bill that I wasn't necessarily in favor of, but, I'm not a politician. So What it does in Pennsylvania, it goes to the first offense for a TIM violation or a move over violation, not TIM violation, is a $500 fine for the first offense, $1,000 for the second offense, $2,000 for the third offense, and also 2 points on your driver's record for that as well. It defines what we're talking about in Pennsylvania of slowing down. Before the previous law, we did have a law written, and it was updated in 2008 to make or 2018 to make the penalties a little bit stricter, but we had 2 struck by this year, so the time was to relook at that bill as well. One of the things that it was added as an amendment that we wasn't necessarily in favor of is it's a move over for disabled vehicles. So I don't have a problem with protecting motorists along the side of the roadway with a disabled vehicle with their 4-ways on, but what the bill did is require them to also either have a flare or a traffic control device out in order for it to be considered a move over law violation. So now, in addition to having, how many motorists do we have along the roadway that actually puts out that extra flare or traffic control device? It may protect some commercial vehicles, but overall, I think it sort of confuses the bill a little bit, so I'm anxious to see how that plays out. The final vote for that should be occurring now, but I was assured by the Senate leadership that vote will happen, and they will be in favor of passing that bill. So I'm hoping that will go to the governor's office, and he will sign it, and we can move forward.
Yeah, I believe that's what the plan is. So thank you for that live update, Todd.
Yep.
I know you worked hard on that, so good job, and it's an
Thank you.
interesting addition with the disabled vehicles. We'll have to see how that plays out. And it sounds like Jeff Council is keeping a spreadsheet of move-over laws, so you'll have to update it for Pennsylvania soon, Jeff. If people have things that you want to share from this call with others, you can send them to us at ssp@safehighways.org. That's Safe Highways plural, and we can get it out to the whole group. I know some people were asking Jeff for the spreadsheet, and I saw that Alan in Missouri has some YouTube videos for training that some others wanted to see. So anything, we could be a conduit to share out to the whole group, things like that. We do a follow-up survey. We appreciate your input. This was a very different format. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a comfortable format. The topic was great. This topic was chosen by the people that were on the last call, and that's how we'll choose the next topic as well. We're going to put up a survey or a poll here for you in a second. Todd, I was upset with my mother when she threw away my Matchbox because, they're worth money now, but I could also use them for work.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, you get a tax write-off if you buy some more.
Yeah.
So,
that's what you tell your wife.
Sam, one of the things I wanted to mention, too, that we have on ResponderSafety.com, since we have a number of responders from all over the country, is we have a interactive U.S. line of duty struck by map on ResponderSafety.com. If you go there and search that, if you have any responders that have been struck and killed, please send me the information so I could update the map. We're trying to keep that updated as much as possible. Really what's on there right now is from the past 5 to 10 years, but if you notice somebody that's missing that I may have missed, let me know so I can update the map, and I usually get that updated within an hour if you let me know.
And Todd and Jack, I clearly heard the need for data on that topic, so Lauren and I have been talking about how maybe we can help with this group to collect some data. So we'll see if we can make something happen going forward with that. Okay, to get you all back to your very important work, we want one more thing from you today, and that's input on our next topic. I'm going to explain them a little bit here before you vote. This time we're going to ask you to just pick up to three choices. You could just pick your top one if there's one you feel strongly about, but we'd like to see what maybe number 2, number 3 are. The Trick My Truck idea and the show and tell idea is a very different format. What we'd like to do is have you all go around with a phone, and we might do this on Zoom, we'll see, but we'd go around the country and just get a look at your vehicles on the Trick My Truck one. Just take a phone around for 2 minutes and tell us some things about each vehicle, then we'll move on to the next state. And the show and tell, I think, would be similar, except that would be maybe on a specific piece of equipment that maybe you have that you want to show off or show everybody of what you have. So in that one, it'd be much less of a presentation and much more of a Zoom go around the room sort of thing. The other topics on here, SSP technologies. I think the technologies one leans more towards apps, the alerts for work zones, things like that. Something that's more on a technical nature than equipment per se. Fundings, budgets, and sponsorships. I know the patrols are funded, a lot of you through FHWA, so we get into some of that topic. Just want to say, Travelers Marketing, we've tried really hard to keep sponsorship out of this group, but if that's an issue or topic that you want to learn more about, I think I can find a presenter on that topic. Equipment and uniforms, that one's a little different. There's the poll topic I see coming up there. We'll get that centered in a minute. Equipment and uniforms is a little different than we've done before with equipment. I think this is maybe things outside the truck a bit, like uniforms or handouts or things of that nature maybe that we haven't already covered. And then the last one on here, you see it's previously done 2-3 years ago. We did a performance measures. That's a topic that there seems to be some additional interest in, so we could refresh that one if that's one of your top choices. So the poll has been added there. I hope you can all see it, and you will all take 1 minute and let us know what you want us to talk about. We're looking at a January probably time frame for that. Give you the holidays off, and then depending on what topic you come, we'll get you information for a mid to late January next topic. Thank you for your input today. It was great. I love the participation that we had. I like this comfortable format. We'll send out a survey and see what you guys thought of it as well. Stay safe. That's all. That's what this whole thing has been about. But really, it's important for all on this call as well. You guys all are on the road doing some dangerous stuff. So appreciate your time and your participation especially. But make sure you're taking care of yourself. Have a great holiday season, and we'll be back in touch with you via email. And if there's anything that you think we can do better with these, we're wide open to hear that. Just a final shout out to our steering committee that was really a big part of this presentation today with Todd and John especially. And of course the Sullivans, really wonderful information. ResponderSafety.com is a great site. I can see why all of you guys are involved with it. I think you're going to get a lot more people involved with it after today's call. So thank you, Lauren and NOCO. They really do an incredible amount of work to make this seem seamlessly as it has been today. So just want to thank them as well. All right, everyone, we did a perfect timing here. Again, kudos to Lauren for that. It's right at the 3 o'clock hour. So thank you all. Stay safe. And we'll be in touch. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.